This is the Felt website, which you can find at felt.com. The first thing I noticed, which I assume is intentional because it's moving, which is going to draw the eye, is this these sort of coordinate markers, marquee at the top. You probably just saw that it changed direction, which is an interesting choice. But I quite like this, first of all, because it sort of introduces the website in quite a fun way. This sort of scrolling unnecessary text is a nice little touch. It helps you understand a bit more about the company and how they approach design. It's on brand because it's got these coordinate markers that mean nothing to me as a non-map person. But also because websites I'm used to seeing have this space reserved for a banner that says, oh, our conference is coming soon, or we've just raised 3.2 billion in funding. So it's quite nice to see this space above the navigation used for something a bit more fun and a bit more on brand, rather than something temporary that sort of ruins the flow. You might also notice this splodge here. This is quite a nice sort of reference to maps, I assume. This looks like a landmass to me, or maybe it's a water mass, something like that. Also, there's a very green color scheme happening, you've probably noticed. And I like that, first of all, because green is land in a map, but also because the company is called Felt, and Felt is often green, like, for example, on a snooker table. So that's quite nice, and it's a good way to make a website feel both simple and coherent if you use shades of green throughout, which they've done here. So this is a shade of green for the sort of blob of land. This is a shade of green for the request demo. This text in this white box is green, or white button rather. So yeah, that's nice. They've got a very big video of the product, which is great. They're making good use of the space, and this movement helps draw your eye down once you've read this to look at how this product works. You can see here down, they've got outlines of these blobs. Up here it's a solid color, but down here, now that there's content essentially in the foreground that you don't want to distract from, they still want to use this visual brand pattern, this visual language of these blobs, but they've made it outlines instead so that it fades into the background. I do wonder though if they're using this here, partly because it's a bigger open space without that. There's not much like the videos to sort of draw your eye in. They're giving you a grid of logos. But I do wonder if they're using these outlines here because this is a relatively uninteresting section of the website. And so up here, you've got nothing in the background. You've got a video, which is really interesting. Even further up, you've got this title. You do have this up here that sort of introduces the website and points towards the title. But these are all things that I assume Felt considers quite interesting and they want to focus you on. Maybe they consider this grid of logos less important or less worthy of that focus, and so they're more happy to bring in this background element to make things feel more interesting. You can see again, they're using them quite sparingly, which is quite nice because it has, I think, a bigger impact if you do this less often. Since you're used to sort of nothing in the background after this point, it's all blank again. And then suddenly they're helping to emphasize this here with this blob, which matches the sort of intensity of the one up here. Again, more large photo, this is an image in this case. You can see there this background change from a lighter green to a darker green. Again, they've pulled in these outlines, but now they fill the whole space, which is an interesting choice. I think it's because it scrolls with you. So they didn't want to just have, if I go back up here, you can see that this scrolls with the page and this sort of frames the content around here. You can see it stops just after these logos do, and it starts just after this image or this video. But down here, they turn the background darker, and they've got these outline patterns, but they scroll with you, so they stay still as you scroll. And so then they couldn't really use that to frame everything, so I guess they went for a full screen effect. But one thing I like about this is that they move from a lighter background to a darker background. That means they can use the lighter background as the container for this text, and so that gives you a bit more structure here between the images and the text below them. So they've gone for a darker background so that they can have these containers, but the containers will still use this color. They don't need to get an even lighter color. There are the containers again. So they're just introducing, with some spacing, different features in sections. And now they've gone back to the lighter green in the background. So this felt like a different section of the website, even though it's a subtle transition from lighter to darker. They're saying packed with power, so I guess that's this whole section where they want to keep you on this idea of power. That's quite interesting because on a lot of tech websites, you might see them go from light to dark mode when they want to speak directly to developers. And so dark mode has sort of become this signifier of this part is for developers. I wonder if they did that for the packed with power section. Maybe they're essentially darker means it's more professional. Is an easy way to think of it. And so I wonder if they're going darker because now they're saying, okay, we're speaking to the people who care about power in their mapping tool. We'll have a darker and essentially more technical background because they've got this these outlines that look like sort of map blueprints or drawn maps. So now they're back to a lighter background, and I noticed this is for the whole team, right? So maybe they've pulled back from that dark background to go lighter because they're saying now this is for everyone. This is not just the technical side. Here they bring in a new approach to containers. You can see they've got these lines. What's interesting is that these lines are not all perfectly aligned. So if I line up with the lower one here, you can see that the line doesn't touch the others. They're all different heights. And I quite like that because it reminds me of, drawn lines on a map. You're using this tool to create maps. These are the sorts of maybe planning lines you would use, and they might go long because you're using a ruler and a pencil. So you wouldn't necessarily care about them matching up in terms of height and at the top and the bottom. As you draw them, you just want them to hit the right sort of corner. So this creates quite a nice structure, but also makes it feel a bit more personal, a bit more human, because they've got these mismatched lines. You can see here in the background, they've got this sort of land blob again, and that's a darker green than this next one, which is a lighter green. This has come more into the foreground. Here it's behind the content, just, it's behind these lines. So maybe they don't want to distract you from this text. But here they've got these images that are really drawing you in. These are very interesting visual elements. And so they can go a bit lighter with this blob, but also that means that this blob has a higher visual weight. It's going to have more of a presence on the page. And in this case, they've got everything left aligned. This blob helps to essentially balance what you're seeing on the page, this layout. So this title's left aligned. These images are shifted to the left on the page. This blob is here to help everything feel a bit more visually balanced, both the title and the images, because it sort of extends down here. You can see here they've got images with the text, and the text is now aligned with the image, whereas before I pointed out they were using this pattern where they've got the image and then they've got this section below it with the text indented. It's got some padding. So that's it's sort of the same pattern but slightly different approach now that they've not got the dark background to introduce the lighter containers. And then they switch to a darker background just for this last section to help you focus on the call to action, which is quite nice because they've already introduced that pattern of a darker background. Now they switch to it again to focus you on this. And one last thing I like is they've still got this blob effect here, but now it's this sort of, well, it's not a bright orange, but it feels bright, compared to everything else, because orange is a very different color from green, and you've been really just shown nothing but green so far, apart from these images of the product. So now that they're not so worried about distracting you from the content because you've reached the end of the page, they're throwing in a bit more brand personality, and this really sort of makes this footer section much more visually interesting because suddenly, you're seeing a color you're not used to.